An out-of-body experience is defined as a phenomenon in which a person perceives the outside world, but from a location outside of their physical body. You may know it by its original name, astral projection. These instances have been reported since ancient times, and you yourself may have even had an out-of-body experience, whether you realized it in the moment or not. But let's imagine just for a moment that you do find yourself out of body. You are just your awareness looking down at yourself sleeping below. Most would attempt a frantic return to their body, but what if you chose differently? What would happen if you allowed your awareness to drift farther and further away from yourself? What or who do you think you would find? Imagine that in this state you could fly anywhere, to the pyramids or to Jupiter. Imagine traveling back in time or seeking out a deceased loved one. Where would you look first? What questions would you ask? And what would you do with the answers? Well, one such man was brave enough to journey as far out of the body as infinity would allow, visiting worlds beyond and communicating with non-human entities for over 35 years. His name was Robert Monroe, and he became so obsessed with the out-of-body phenomenon, he founded the Monroe Institute, focused on research and development of technology, which could be used not only to induce out-of-body states, but to explore the frontier of human consciousness itself and what lies beyond. These methods were aptly named the Gateway Process. And of course, we can't have nice things, so it wouldn't take long before the CIA became involved. Using Monroe's techniques, they began a secret military project to enter into the out-of-body state themselves and go beyond that for reasons of national security, I'm sure. Together, we'll discover how this technology works, what lies beyond the veil of our wakeful perceptions, why we are here, what happens after we die, and how you can use these techniques to explore the universe for yourself, if you so wish. Oh, and just a warning, some of the things we'll be discussing today, they could disturb some viewers, so if you find yourself not ready to tread outside of your third-dimensional perceptions, you may need to sit this one out, because the truths discovered in the astral realm, they're not for the faint of heart. Alright, I'm going to stop being dramatic because we have a lot to get through today. I mean, a lot. Today we're going to be discussing the Gateway experience, which was a subgenre of Project Stargate. That's right, the remote viewing program. Robert Monroe founded RAM Enterprises, which was a company that produced radio programs. But in 1956, once television became popular and it seemed that radio could be going out of style, Monroe had to choose between turning RAM into a television studio or taking a different route. He decided to attempt to research and develop technology which would allow people to learn new skills and information while sleeping by the use of sound. When these research experiments got underway, the standout issue was how to make test subjects fall asleep. The use of any sleeping medication would, of course, corrupt the findings, so they had to come up with a method to get subjects to sleep very quickly, naturally, but in a way that could be controlled. They decided to try using different sound frequencies to achieve this. They came up with what they call the frequency following response. It's a method using binaural beats, one at 100 Hz in one ear and one at 104 Hz in the other ear. By using frequencies so close together, the brain finds the difference and produces the frequency of 4 Hz. They found that this can induce rapid sleep states. Robert Monroe made himself the key test subject in these frequency-following experiments out of pure curiosity. In 1958, after 2 years of working on this project, a frightening change took place. Monroe had his very first out-of-body experience, but he had no idea what to even call it at the time. In the time leading up to this event, he noticed that his dreams were starting to change. He had a recurring dream for over a year where he was flying an airplane. He was speeding down the runway of an airport for takeoff. However, once the plane lifted off the ground, he found himself flying through a mass of what he describes as electrical wires. Millions of them intertwining into a void. There was no sky above, no earth below, just a massive thicket of tangled electrical lines. Then Monroe noticed during his meditations that he started experiencing physical sensations. Towards the end of his practice, as he was lying in bed, he said he started to experience what he refers to as the body buzz sensation. This would be a sensation of deep vibration within the body. This frightened Monroe at first, so he saw his doctor to get a checkup. And the doctor reassured him that the body buzzing was probably just caused by stress and he should try to relax more. Monroe continued experiencing the body buzz for some time, but became used to it. However, one bedtime meditation would change all of that. As he was lying in bed next to his wife, Monroe recalled thinking of something happy and experiencing the body buzz sensation towards what he thought would be the end of his nightly meditation. But then he felt like a bumping against his shoulder, as if something had run into him. He opened his eyes to discover that it was the ceiling. He looked down and thought he saw a fountain, but really it was his bedroom light fixture, only he was seeing it from above instead of below. As he continued to look around in amazement, Monroe saw his wife sleeping in his bed below, and a man lying next to her. At first, this confused him. Who is this man lying next to his wife? But then, in horror, he realized that it was him, or at least, his body. Panicked, wondering if perhaps he was dead and his soul was journeying into the afterlife, Monroe began frantically swimming through the air trying to get back into his body. He made it back, of course, but was understandably shaken. After this first out-of-body experience, Monroe visited both a neurologist and a psychiatrist, both of which cleared him of any disease or disorder. The psychiatrist hinted at this experience being of some spiritual significance and urged Monroe to seek the guidance of a guru in India. Monroe didn't take this advice, as he was a Westerner and wanted to tackle the issue through a Western method of thinking and research. Monroe was also very apprehensive about using any jargon that could be associated with the occult. He worried that the stigma associated with that stuff would lead to his experience and research to be dismissed as nonsense or heretical. After a year of these experiences, Monroe shifted his entire company's focus to research and development of the out-of-body experiences. The Monroe Institute derived a method to induce this state in the 1970s called hemispheric synchronization, or hemisync for short. This name refers to the two hemispheres of the brain working together. Typically, electrical signals just sort of bounce back and forth between the right and left hemisphere of the neocortex, but with the hemisync frequencies, both sides are used together in a consistent harmony. Hemisync not only can help induce sleep, but heightened states of wakefulness, as well as intense focus. It can also be used as a treatment for depression. It can be used to numb the five senses while the mind stays awake for surgeries. Using specific sound frequencies to induce hemisync, they were able to shift their test subjects not only into sleep, but into altered states of consciousness where the body slept, but the mind was still fully awake and able to communicate to handlers outside of the booths in a lot of cases. The Monroe Institute offers the hemisync recordings and guidelines for practice on their website, and you can purchase the recordings to try all of this for yourself. But be warned, the further up into the program you get, there's really no telling what you could find. So what did Robert Monroe and the other hemisync subjects see when they went out of body? Did they just, float around the room or something? Nope, not even close. Because they went everywhere. And I mean everywhere. The subjects were fondly named the Explorers. While out of body, they described being able to travel anywhere on Earth that they wished. They could visit loved ones far away or even at times hear their thoughts. They could explore the moon, which they say they found quite boring. Then they explored the solar system, traveling either slowly or faster than the speed of light. They could move through solid objects like walls or concrete. They could move past atomic radiation or oceans of water without coming to any harm. Robert assures the readers at the beginning of his second book that after 15 years of out-of-body exploration that he is in perfect health and is at least mostly sane. And beyond that, they were able to explore realities beyond the third dimension altogether, which science had only theorized about at the time. So they discovered that, yes, consciousness can transcend time and space. I'm sure you're wondering, did they see any aliens out there in outer space? And the answer is no, unfortunately. They did, however, encounter thousands of non-human entities in the non-physical universe. And when we say non-physical universe, I'm pretty sure they mean outside of the third dimension altogether. The explorers had looked everywhere without any indication that there was other life in the universe until the 1970s, when a small change was made to the gateway process. This very affirmation was added before the hemisync steps. Also, I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires. It was suddenly as if a curtain had been lifted. Almost every time one of our explorers went into the out-of-body state or simply into an advanced focus 12, they encountered intelligent beings who were more or less willing to communicate and could do so. After several years of finding only barrenness, the effect upon us was overwhelming. We sometimes had difficulty knowing how to handle it. And this is very interesting because many of the test subjects never even met each other, so it's not that this was some sort of conspiracy or mass hysteria. This seems to be an organic event that took place. But now the explorers were able to communicate with an array of beings, some of which appeared only as light bodies, others wearing a humanoid skin, so to speak, so as not to frighten the explorers. The encounters vary so widely that I can't cover all of them, but some that stood out were this trend, it seems, that these entities would claim that Earth was their territory. And I don't mean as if they owned it, but rather that they were assigned to monitor the events of Earth by some higher government or force, which is weird because several of them said that. Robert writes of being taken forward and backwards in time by these beings. He journeyed beyond the edge of our dimension and was given invaluable knowledge by these beings he calls inspecs, or intelligent species. They encountered and communicated with entities that can't even be described within three-dimensional parameters. So what exactly is happening when we go out of body? Now, to fully explain this, I need to dive into the nature of reality for a moment. So according to these studies, you, I, and everything around us is just energy in motion. Nothing is solid, at least not the way that you think it is. So your desk or your phone that you're probably watching this on, you would say, this is definitely solid. Like, what are you saying? Well, it's not. It's actually made up of billions of tiny particles that are vibrating. You just can't perceive it. Energy in motion. The earth, the air, your body, everything is made up of essentially energy in motion, and we'll dive further into that as we get into the CIA documents. Now to understand human perception. Humans can perceive very little of what exists within the third dimension. Visually, we can perceive that which is within visible light. Our acoustic senses can only perceive a very narrow band of frequency, and that band actually narrows the further we age. If you told someone in the 1800s that the room they were standing in was full of radio waves that they couldn't see or hear, they would think you were crazy. But now we fully accept that fact into our reality. We all use Wi-Fi and are perfectly aware of how it works, at least some of us, but we cannot perceive it with our five senses. On top of that, though, there's UV rays, X-rays, microwaves, etc. that we cannot perceive with our five senses, and yet they still exist within this dimension. So moving forward in this conversation, we must allow that there may be things or entities which exist within third-dimensional reality that we cannot perceive in our default state of wakefulness. Once we're in the out-of-body state, however, our perception is not limited in this way. And then beyond the third dimension is just a whole other circus of possibilities. We have the lower fourth dimension where some baddies may live, according to Robert Monroe, David Icke, and the CIA. We'll get to them in a minute, don't worry. Then there's the fifth dimension where there exists beings far beyond our comprehension, including the inspecs. There's no telling exactly how many of these dimensions there are. The Gnostics, for example, believed that there were 12, but no one really knows for sure. There aren't clean breaks between these dimensions either. It's more of a gradient effect, where in some areas we may observe the lower fourth dimension bleeding into ours more so than at other physical locations. If you've ever been in an old house or just a strange place that gives you goosebumps, maybe you feel like you're being watched or there's just kind of a weird energy about, that feeling that you're having is you perceiving that bleed through, that gradient of dimensions. And the veil between dimensions is actually thinner in certain parts of the earth than others, and then it can thin at different times of the year as well. Before we can even get into the lower fourth or beyond, we have the M field and we have the H band. The H band is terrifying, and I believe someone close to me experienced it firsthand after a traumatic injury as he was being transported to the hospital a few years ago. The H-band is a field which is the manifestation of all uncontrolled thought that emanates from all living things on Earth. It sounds like an endless, screaming, angry mob of noise. It's awful, and Monroe discourages anyone from spending too much time in there. We do have to pass through it, though, on our out-of-body journey in order to see what lies beyond the third dimension. But be careful, because it can smother you if you let it. The M field is quite different. It's a broad field of energy which is virtually unrecognizable in our contemporary civilization. It's the only energy field common to and operational both within and outside the third dimension, and is present in varying degrees in all physical matter. It is the Native American idea that everything on Earth has a spirit. This is the field of nonverbal communication, emotion, intuition, and psychic phenomena. Group thoughts, such as mass hysteria, could easily be recognizable as examples of the M field at work. On a positive end, the great feeling you get when you're at a live music performance is another good example of this force at work. The M field is not a location or a state that you have to pass through when in your out-of-body state, but rather a radiation that can cause interference, both in the physical and non-physical realm. Let's get into the specific gateway process techniques. This is what you can expect should you choose to attempt an out-of-body experience by use of the Monroe Institute's tapes. The protocols are designed to enable the user to manipulate high-energy states, which can be achieved if the user continues to work with the tapes over a period of time. How much time is required for it to work varies from person to person. Robert Monroe was able to roll out, as he puts it, into the out-of-body state pretty much at will. The efficiency of the practice, meaning how quickly could you expect to be able to go out of body, well, that depends on a few variables. The sensitivity of your nervous system, that plays a major role. So how much anxiety you deal with, and also how indoctrinated you are into any belief system could be a factor. But if you have any experience with meditation or transcendental meditation, to be specific, that could be a huge plus, and it could really speed things along for you. During the experiments, subjects were asked to lie in a darkened booth with headphones on. They would be given an earpiece by which they would receive instruction from an agent stationed outside of the booth. The tapes begin, and the first step is to take all extraneous thought and visualize putting it into a box. This is called the energy conversion box. Then you're told to hum a monotonous tone so as to create resonance within the body, specifically the skull. Similar to the Om practice in yoga, which neurobiology tells us can be used to stimulate the vagus nerve for a general calming effect on the body. Next comes the gateway affirmation. You, the subject, must state that you are aware that you are more than your physical body, and that you have a deep longing to explore the universe. Then the hemisync frequencies are played. Next come physical relaxation techniques, along with white and pink noise added to the hemisync frequencies. These will put the brain and body on the threshold of sleep. At this point, you would be in a very deep state of relaxation. Next, you must visualize the creation of an energy balloon, beginning at the top of the head and extending to the feet and back up and then out away from the body. This is very important. This step instructs your consciousness on the creation of an energy pattern, which is designed to protect you from conscious entities with lower-level energies, which you may encounter. Who are these lower-level entities? Good question. Rest assured that encountering these entities is highly unlikely on your first excursion, as it's unlikely that you'll make it past the terrestrial plane. The tapes are made up of numbered focus states. You'll have to work your way up to focus 10 before your consciousness can begin to communicate with dimensions beyond that of our five-sense reality. Once you reach the phase of greatly expanded awareness known as focus 12, you are ready to employ specific tools which will allow you to control your expanded awareness to attain knowledge. I'll explain the varying paths you could use to achieve this. The first is for the pursuit of problem solving. In this Focus 12 state, you can decide upon a problem you'd wish to solve, and then using your expanded awareness, you project your question into the universe. And then the universe will provide the necessary information for you to solve this problem yourself. It's pretty cool. The next would be patterning. This process is exactly what we know today as manifestation or the law of attraction. This technique involves the use of your awareness to achieve desired outcomes. It involves concentration on the desired objective while in a Focus 12 state. Then, by using your awareness, you project your perception of that objective as if it has already happened to you in the universe. This particular method is based on the belief that the thought patterns generated by our consciousness in a state of expanded awareness create holograms, which represent the situation we desire to bring about and, in so doing, establish the basis for actual realization of that goal. Once the thought-generated hologram of the sought-after objective is established in the universe, it becomes an aspect of reality, which interacts with the universal hologram to bring about the desired objective, which might not, under other circumstances, ever occur. In other words, the technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence the development of reality in the third dimension. However, the more complicated the objective, the more radically it departs from our current reality, the more time the universal hologram will need to reorient our reality sphere to accommodate our desires. Monroe trainers caution against attempting to force the pace of this process because the individual could succeed in dislocating his existing reality with drastic consequences. I'll just give a really specific example. So let's say that you project into the universe that you need $600,000, okay? And you project it as hard as you can, and you're like, no, I need it now. It has to be on my timing, like I need it tomorrow. You could get that amount of money, but you could get it through a means that you don't want it, such as like a relative dying and it being a life insurance policy, something like that, so if the universe has to reorient itself too quickly and, it can get kind of dicey. So be careful what you wish for. Next would be the energy bar tool. You envisage a small dot of energy in your mind's eye, which you then charge with more of your conscious awareness until it's practically pulsating with energy. Then you extrude this one-dimensional dot into a three-dimensional, thin, cylindrical shape. Through this energy bar, you can then channel cosmic forces of the universe. I really can't help but compare this technique to the motif of the magic wand iconography, which has been used throughout history and is super big in pop culture, or even that of a king's scepter. These symbols we understand to indicate power, It's interesting to wonder whether this shape holds some archetypal meaning in our human subconscious. Focus 15 allows you to travel back in time, but only around 5% of participants can achieve a true Focus 15 state. And lastly, Focus 21 can allow you to travel to the future. This is the highest level of the Gateway experience, and very, very few participants can achieve this state. So what did Robert Monroe and the explorers learn about the universe from these out-of-body experiences? Based on the data acquired through decades of hemisync trials, Robert Monroe concluded that human consciousness is an infinite continuum. When we're asleep, we're still conscious, but simply shifted along the spectrum of consciousness to another kind of wakefulness. People experiencing cognitive distortion, such as dementia or psychosis, or even alcoholism, can be in a dual-phase relationship with consciousness. They're experiencing two or more areas of the spectrum of consciousness at once.
What happens is, if you look at alcoholics, what happens is that the alcohol has been blocking dream sleep for so long, and the pressure for dream sleep is built up so powerfully in the brain, it actually just spills over into wakefulness. And so you start to essentially dream while you're awake. It's this sort of collision of two states of consciousness. So you get delirium.
When asked what the significance was of these findings, Monroe stated something contrary to most belief systems today. He said the most significant conclusion of all the team's exploration and research was to know that we are more than our physical bodies, and we're even more than our physical experiences. Our consciousness is infinite, inherently, and nothing we do or do not do in this lifetime can change that. And once you know this, not just believe it, but know it, the fear of death, which has controlled you your entire life, no longer exists.